Scholastic Audio presents Battle Dragons #1, City of Thieves by Alex London, read by A.J. Beckles. Abel leaned low into Karak's back so that they wouldn't be able to see him clearly, and poured on the speed. Karak flapped madly. The dragon seemed to be enjoying it. They raced toward the wyvern, Abel's hair fluttering and his eyes stinging. He'd have to get a pair of aviator glasses like literally every other dragon rider had. At the edge of the Raptura district, they blasted through a huge hologram ad for hot pepper and cocoa-covered wyvern wafers, swooping his dragon through the chocolates just as they snapped apart. If anyone was looking up from their partying, all they would have noticed was one big dark crumb slightly larger than the others, breaking free from the ad and disappearing with a glimmer of starlight. Abel pulled back on Karak's spine to get him flying almost straight up. He aimed for the space in the sky between two bright circus lights so that Karak's body would be invisible in the dark. Then he got right above his brother's wyvern and leaned forward. Karak hesitated. "Come on, buddy, this is it," he pleaded. "Dive!" Karak tucked his wings. For a moment, all was still and Abel felt weightless. Then came the fall. As Karak's nose pointed down between the buildings, Abel's legs flew up behind him and his whole body floated upward. Only his hands clutching a knob on the dragon's spine kept him from spinning off into the dark sky. The lights of the city filled his eyes, looming huge. Abel had trouble focusing on the silver glint of the wyvern in between all the bright colors and flashing lasers. But Karak knew what to do. He buzzed right past the silver wyvern, just barely clipping its wings and letting out a blood-boiling roar as he did it. Ah! Abel didn't even know he was screaming until they were already past the wyvern, nearly down at ground level. Then, suddenly, they were looping up again. Karak's claws sparked off the sidewalk pavement, sending the groundworms that pulled food carts and pedicabs along the plaza scrambling out of the way. Karak flew low, and Abel did his best to steer through the busy lanes. He dared a glance over his shoulder to make sure that Silas was following him. Turning like that made him dizzy, though, and now he understood why dragon pilots had rear-view mirrors set into their goggles. Looking backward while flying at dragon chase speeds was a recipe for high-velocity vomit. Abel kept his eyes forward and took deep breaths through his nose, just like he did when the school bus hit bumpy wind. In his hands, he felt Karak's bones getting hotter, and the seams between his deep black scales glowed orange. The dragon began to turn toward the wyvern. No, Abel pleaded, trying to pull Karak's reins so he straightened out again. "No fire, no killing, just no." The dragon twisted his head around and glared at Abel, still flying forward at full speed. Abel could see the glow inside his mouth. He feared for a second his new partner might incinerate him, except he was on the dragon's own back. He wasn't sure if dragons could set themselves on fire or not, but he didn't imagine this one would enjoy finding out. Karak snorted smoke and sparks and straightened his neck again, stretching his body into a sleek line and putting on more speed. The wyvern with the flamethrower was more maneuverable than the Reaper, just like in Dracotech, but it was much slower on straightaways. Abel had to slow Karak down to keep them close. He pressed himself down against Karak's back as flat as he could and hoped Silas hadn't recognized him. The sudden jet of green poison that blasted just over his head made it pretty clear he hadn't. Or it meant that Silas was trying to kill his own little brother, which was unlikely, but not impossible. Abel leaned sideways to avoid the next blast of the wyvern's breath weapon. Karak rolled in a corkscrew, spinning upside down and around and around. Abel held on. His head barely missed the pavement as they swirled, and his knuckles turned white gripping the saddle. He'd forgotten to clip into his safety harness. Only the force of the spin kept him from falling off. Karak flew straight toward the huge stone and glass entrance to a fancy restaurant with its own landing platform halfway up the building. "Ah!" Abel screamed and pulled back on the reins. An instant before they would have crashed into the restaurant, Karak turned straight up the front of the sleek skyscraper, the glittering reflection of his belly just an arm's length away. They lost some speed on the turn, and the reflection off the building, Abel saw the silver wyvern right behind them, almost close enough to bite Karak's tail. Another poison-green glow formed in its mouth. From what he'd learned in the homework Ally had given him, a wyvern's poison breath was harmless to other dragons, but could paralyze a full-grown man for 3 days. And that was if the wyvern chose not to eat him immediately, or in slow and painful pieces. An orb of swirling green poison was building up pressure in its throat. Abel might have stood a chance if he'd had a protective suit, but all he had was a hoodie and hope. He risked looking back over his shoulder again. This time, he needed Silas to see his face. They were flying straight up a building, so looking back really meant looking straight down. If it had made him a little dizzy when they were flying horizontally, vertically it made him completely ill. The people outside the restaurants and theaters of the plaza were the size of bugs. The lights of the city swirled and danced and spun. If he fell, it looked like he might fall forever and never actually hit the ground. Not if I fall, his spinning mind catastrophized. But when? That was, of course, the moment his hand slipped. Abel fell straight for the gaping maw of the wyvern and his brother's startled face.